This is your 20-minute podcast, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now, here's your host, David Brower.
Hi, this is David Brower, and welcome to another edition of your 20-minute podcast. My guest today is Sasha Loghonh, and she brings over 15 years of experience to the commercial and spiritual realm by working with private and commercial clients. Hi, Sasha. How are you?
Hi, David. Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year indeed. Yeah, I hope 2017 is a good one. We were just talking about that briefly before we started recording, and you made a comment about 2016 might have been a little challenging for folks and maybe a little more optimism for this year, you think?
I hope so. Onward and forward and upward.
And upward. Well said. Well said. So you have an MBA. You specialize in organizational and human behavior. And spiritual life is a part of everything that you do, it looks like. Life strategies, business coach. So where was the epiphany that brought you into this world?
Okay, so I started out coaching without me even realizing I was coaching while I was a student, when I was even prior to high school. I think the first coaching opportunity I was granted was, I think, around the age of 12.
Wow.
When there would be foreign students that would come to the United States, and they would get paired up with students, and I would be the one who would show them around, help them out with their homework, acclimate them with the school environment, show them who's who. And then through word of mouth, teachers would recommend me after school if I wanted to earn extra money. And they would say, well, this parent has a child and they need help. And if you could help this person, for example, lose weight, which is a true case that I worked on. But to what degree can you be a teenager and help another person lose weight? Because you're also learning in the process of how to live a healthy life. But it was also in offering companionship and learning how to work with people. And not only do we learn those skill sets as a kid, but I think as we grow older, by the time we're in high school and beyond, there's less engagement from adults playing that pivotal role in introducing us to one another. The responsibility falls onto us to know how to coexist with people of all different lifestyles and differences. And it was one stepping stone at a time. And then by high school, I was also engaged in sports management. I ran for maybe 2-3 seasons, but because I grew up with a deviated septum at that time, I left. And the coach was really inclined to keep me on the team because I was part of the family. So I ended up helping out in managing boys and girls track teams, cross country, indoor, outdoor track. And that itself was another form of coaching mechanism.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
And outside of school, I was already working as an academic coach to private child actors, you could say, who were working out of Broadway back in New York City at that time. Because I graduated from high school from Jersey. Let me put it this way. Every year of school until high school was in a different town or a different state.
Welcome to my world. I totally understand that.
So I guess you come from the military.
Well, my dad was a very nomadic man in his career, and I was in the radio for a very long time, which is a very nomadic business. And so when I used to move every 2 years, whether I needed to or not. And in fact, what was it when I was growing up? I was thinking about this the other day. From the first grade to the 8th grade, I lived in the same town, but I lived in 6 different houses.
I've done, I think, 3 different houses in one town over a period of 2 years. So as a child, I think when you grow up in so many different places, you're used to having your view changes every month or often when you look outside the window, that you get to a point where you're thinking, okay, I've been here for a bit too long. What do I do next? So I've been blessed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To travel to different cities because I also went to Boston University for my first degree. And then I went up and down the East Coast, where some of my stomping ground was also in Washington, D.C. That has been a very kind city in my past, where I kicked off some of my career opportunities. And then I used to go from Boston all the way down to North Carolina. And then I've gone from East Coast to California and then in the middle of the country. So it's interesting.
But you haven't been to Colorado.
Actually, I have been to Colorado, and Denver is a beautiful city. I
Yeah,
frequented from north of Colorado to Colorado Springs, and I will tell you that I've driven cross country from the east to west, west to east, and there are probably only 5 or 6 states that I haven't driven through.
good for you. Good for you. Yeah, I live about an hour north of Denver, about 30 miles from Rocky Mountain National Park. So we're very blessed to live in this part of the country. Well, I'm trying to catch you on my motorcycle. I'm trying to ride my Harley in all 48 lower states, and I still got 21 left to go. So you're ahead of me.
Oh, okay. But I'm sure that you know the difference between flying, trains, and driving. All of them are different experiences, but I've done the driving,
Totally.
and
Yeah, totally.
I will admit it is a very beautiful country. Only I wish more people would get to see parts of it that gets overlooked in the media.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, absolutely right. So, how does the presence of spirituality in your life enhance the business professional or the business professional in you, I guess?
I would say more so the spiritual craft was always innate within me since childhood. And I think while growing up, where I was more sensitive to my environment and being able to read people and circumstances. And I also come from a background where I grew up with premonitions that would play out over a period of time. So it doesn't mean that you always get the premonitions for good news. For me, it's usually warnings or things that I can avoid or things that I have to go through, even though I don't want to,
Right.
whether it comes to relationships and opportunities. And I thought while growing up, all other children were like me. Other people look at the world and feel things the same way I do, but I found out it doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I followed a very practical career path. I was going to become a pediatrician, but then I said, I don't want to go to vet school. And I fell in love with economics and statistics. So I pursued my first degree in business school.
Nice.
And at that time, slowly, I was also spiritually opening up. And by opening up, I mean I started applying, acknowledging those gifts more in going about my day to day decisions. Because I feel I had segregated that spiritual part of me and the business part of me that I started running into problems where I would take up a job opportunity and in a couple of months, I outgrow it. I'm bored. I need to do something else.
Right.
And it wasn't even the money problem. It was just something is not right. And after you go through 4 or 5 of those job opportunities, it can't be the job. It has to be something within me that needs to shift or align. And that's when I started acknowledging that I have to be more open to overall of who I am and not just apply a part of my craft.
When you have that gift or that craft, you can't afford to be selective, right? Even though that is probably a natural choice in the beginning.
Yes, and I feel that when we're led to acknowledge a part of us that we leave dormant, and I believe talent is something that we all have. A talent can be improved within us, but it cannot be created from scratch. So I had to respect the talent. And when the economy, right before the economy started going bad, I told myself that I have to come up with creative ways of creating a new form of income. So I started offering my spiritual counseling services offline, and then I found out there was a market for it online. And that
Nice.
is how Sasha Talks came along. And if you had looked at Sasha Talks maybe 7 years ago, it was only a one-page website with my picture and letting people know the type of questions I will answer and the type of questions I will not answer for you. Because
Good for you.
at the end of the day, you still have to take accountability for your life and your decisions. So it doesn't matter if you're going to a spiritualist or a reader or a lawyer or a financial advisor. People are too quick to point fingers and say, this person told me to make that decision. And I'm not their ideal reader because I throw that accountability back into your lap.
Perfect. I mean, really, I think a lot of people, I mean, we all need to be held accountable, whether it's in our personal relationships, in our business relationships. And when we try to figure out ways to give up that accountability, that is just self destructive, right?
I think so. And I feel that I'm a compassionate person, but I don't wear that part of me on my sleeve because of what I do for a living. I can't be emotionally engaged in their life turbulence or their challenges because I have to be impartial and objective. And some people ask me that you come from the business world and you have to be judgmental to make decisions. And I agree with that.
Right.
But I will say I'm very disciplined when it comes to doing my spiritual work. I remove all of the biases and judgment because I have to tell myself, this isn't about you. This is about whatever circumstance the client presents. You have to just relay the messages. I'm the messenger. And only if they ask me what I would do, that is when I will tell them what I personally would do. But they have to know that you have to make the decision. I can't tell you whether you should leave your job, whether you should get a divorce,
Right.
whether you should have children. At the end of the day, you are the one living the ramifications of your decision.
I have to think that your spiritual gifts, you have to be an amazing listener. And I think that would be an understatement. I think you have to be an amazing listener. And I think that skill set has to carry over to your business world, right?
Yes. I will say I am a work in progress myself. Some days I'm a great listener, and other days I feel as I talk too much because it depends with the type of people that you're interacting with. Some clients are very talkative, and I tell them, depending on the type of session they have, let me know your questions and I will relay the messages. Now, if I'm doing business coaching, the other person has to engage because I could only help you to the degree that you make it known that you need assistance. And sometimes
Right.
people don't need assistance. They just want to have a conversation with somebody so they perhaps are introduced to creative ideas. But no matter what type of service I offer, the person has to be mindful of what they're signing up for and willing to improve their life.
Mindful is kind of one of the buzzwords of today, isn't it? I mean, being more mindful about your life, more mindful about your eating habits, more mindful about your relationships. And I guess, is that the same as just being aware and being conscious and being respectful of your surroundings?
I think so. There are times where people are self-aware as they know what is good for them, but they don't adhere to it. It says, do what I say, not what I do.
Sure.
And of course, because of the new year, this isn't the ideal example I'd like to use, but people come up with New Year's resolutions. I just don't believe in them. I look at it this way. Every day you have an opportunity to either take on a new activity and turn it into a positive habit, or you could walk away from something that isn't working for you. And there are times where people start off on a great note, but then they put their life on autopilot, thinking the relationship will nurture itself. The job will be fine as long as I keep on showing up. And showing up is only part of the ingredient to being successful. And that is where we need to remind ourselves that nothing in life is on autopilot. Time doesn't stop for any one of us, no matter how much pain we're enduring or how long we're waiting for the next opportunity to come along. That make time your ally, not your enemy. And this is coming from somebody who grew up in no patience.
Wow. That's 180 degrees, isn't it?
Yes, and I know that there are times where people who knew me from my high school and college years run into me and they laugh. But that's the irony that until I started acknowledging parts of my spiritual craft, not
Right.
only to apply it in my own life, but to help other people. And I can't help other people unless I work on myself in the process.
Well, and that helps you learn not only about yourself, but helps give you advice to share with others because you've gone through similar experiences, maybe.
Yes, and there are times where I see a part of myself in most of my clients when they come for the spiritual counseling. And it's also therapeutic and healing for me because sometimes I have questions where we just go about living our life and we wonder what would happen in this type of situation. And I run into somebody who's going through that experience and they introduce me to their world. And that's one thing that I feel we're living in the times where everything is labeled. And I don't like labels too much because the type of work that I do, there's a lot of gray area and we all have to figure it out what
Yeah.
works for you.
Yeah, life is not designed to be black and white as much as a lot of us would like it to be, you know.
Yes.
So if you're doing all the spiritual counseling to help other people personally, professionally, all those things, who helps you?
I have 2, 3 good confidants. And I would say the book that came out, Cashing Karma on Sasha Talks, I dedicated the book to my primary life coach, my mom.
Nice.
Even though she's an intuitive herself, she doesn't practice like I do. And I hate to admit this, but My mom has never been wrong in offering me guidance, whether it's about people that come into my path, whether it was love prospects in the past, business prospects. There's something about her. She has very basic education because she grew up in the times where you were homeschooled and then the most obvious thing to do was get married. So she
Right.
doesn't have education more than, I would say, past the high school level. And my dad is more educated and all. So she got paired up with someone who's all about practicality. And my mom is all about intuition and emotion.
My mother was, I got to tell you, my mother was very similar, even though I'm not sure I acknowledged it until after her passing. I'm not sure it dawned on me, but she made it through the 8th grade and that was about it. Grew up on a potato farm, married the, love of her life and went on and had me. I was an only child, so her and I were exceptionally close. And anytime we talked about, even though she didn't know anything about my business to speak of, when we would talk about those things or talk about relationships or talk about friends, she would have such an insightful thought. It was like, well, how do you feel about that? Oh, hadn't thought about it that way. It's fascinating,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. And I think out of all people in my life, regardless of how well they've done for themselves or how educated they are, my mom with the most, I think, life experience, nothing beats life experience.
True.
She could make comments that only she could pinpoint intuitively. And I would say the irony that she is the most understanding when I'm going through a turbulent phase versus all of the people who are practical and they look at it as it's so easy, just resolve your challenge by doing this. And sometimes mothers cannot be replaced.
No, that is a true story. That is absolutely a true story. Well, Sasha, we're a little bit close to running out of time here, so I want to make sure that we have time to promote your website, promote your book, promote anything that you would like to get out there for our listeners to be able to reach to you.
Sure. If anybody has questions or wants to learn more about Sasha Talks, you could go to sashatalks.com and drop me a line. And usually I get back within as soon as possible. And you're welcome to check out the social media. It's mostly related to business or spirituality. And if you have any creative ideas, feel free to pitch them.
Very good. So you're an expert in business, entrepreneurship, spirituality, self-development, professional development, relationships, life transitions. So a lot of opportunities, folks, for you to reach out to Sasha and ask her some questions that you may not even have thought of the answer. You have a gift, my friend. What a treat to talk with you today.
Well, thank you, David. We covered a few things that I typically don't get to share on air. So thank you for asking those unique questions.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's always a treat to talk to somebody who is in such a good place spiritually. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower. I want to thank my guest, Sasha Loghonh, for joining us. And be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/your 20-minute podcast. Sasha, have a great week.
Thank you.
Tell your mom hi.
I will do. Thank you.
Until next time, don't forget to download your free audiobook at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. That's audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast for your free audiobook. And thanks for listening to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower.